Hi, welcome to another episode of the Daring to Transcend podcast. I'm Karen Ann Bulluck, and today I'm excited to introduce to you Jennifer Martindale, who is the Director of Organizational Change Management at J.R. Simplot Company. Jennifer has a really fascinating story to tell about her career, and I can't wait to get started. So let me tell you a little bit about Jennifer before I introduce her. Jennifer helps people, whether in small groups or large organizations, move forward through transformational change in an organization. She specializes in transformational management, strategies that create buy-in, transition mindset, change cultures, challenge assumptions, improve processes, and implement solutions that stick. And that is not easy stuff to do. So welcome, Jennifer. I'm really happy to have you here with us today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here with you, Karen.
So tell us how you got started with change management.
Oh my gosh, I kind of fell into change management. Honestly, my career, when I was young, the financial stability was the metric that really drove my decisions when I was young. It was really important to me that I had a skill set and a career where I could care for myself, care for my children. This is even before I had children, but that was kind of my barometer of decisions when I was young. So I was at the University of Utah in Salt Lake City and pursued a career in accounting because my mindset at the time, it was all about, okay, strong skill set, and you can take it anywhere. And accounting to me made sense. I do like accounting, actually, the balance of the debits and the credits, and there's a truth to it. It tells an interesting story. You can say whatever you want, but the cash flow statement tells you really what the priorities are, things like that. While I was pursuing my career, I actually pursuing my degree in accounting. I was actually working at the University of Utah in the payroll office, because there was a significant tuition benefit for working there. And so I did that. And it was during preparations for Y2K. And I don't know if you or your viewers remember, but during Y2K, the whole world was going to blow up and we were all going to lose all of our money and there would be no more water, no toilet paper.
Oh, yeah, I totally remember that because actually, I was the Y2K officer at my company during that time period. So absolutely was totally responsible for making sure that everything wasn't going to blow up, at least as much as we could control.
Yeah. Well, it was happening there in Salt Lake City too, where I was going to school. So when I was in the payroll office, I was recruited to be on the Y2K PeopleSoft implementation team to implement the new payroll system, including a Kronos implementation. And I kind of did both. It was a fascinating period of time. And I just remember being just shocked that I just got to do things that others in the organization would say, hey, you can do this. And I didn't have any experience. They were just letting me do it. And I was jumping in and getting things done. So it was really interesting that way. But it was still my main focus to get my accounting career and do that.
Yeah, because accounting is nice. Accounting is nice and solid. And I mean, my parents wanted me to be a business major when I got to school, so I would have something, all of those things too.
Finance is nerdy.
Yeah, that's such a normal process when we make decisions that are based on, financial security, based on what we think is a sure thing, right? But I love that you got involved in the change management and Kronos, which if the viewers aren't knowing what that software is, which is a human resource management software, time and attendance system, right? Because I actually implemented that at my company.
Oh, so it's PKT your entrance now. Yeah, it has changed. But after Y2K, and the world actually still existed, graduated from college, it was time to make a move. College was done. It was time to jump into the world and into my career. So we moved to Boise, Idaho. I accepted the associate controller position at Boise State University. and was the associate controller and the controller for a while, practicing accounting, learning more about it. Definitely there's a distinction between what you learn in the classroom and what you do in the workplace. Not always the same thing at all. And in that time, really had an opportunity for process improvement, because Boise State's a bigger, more mature place now in terms of process and that kind of thing. But when I joined in, I think it was the year 2000, in the year 2000, it was more of a mom and pop shop. It was really less mature than it is today. For example, I would get blank sheets would be brought to me to sign for wire transfers with no, but that was just, and that kind of way of working is not, I'm not judging it at all, but it was an indication of the maturity at the time. So lots of opportunity for process improvement, making some changes, refining what we were doing so that it was a better fit for the size and scope of the organization. And it's significantly bigger now than it was in the year 2000. So I was the associate controller for a while, the controller for a while. By that time, I had had my second son. And when he was 4 years old, all of a sudden, one evening, he started having seizures, literally, in the kitchen. Just dropped out of the sky. We really struggled with finding him care and getting his seizures under control. He was having hundreds of seizures a day. I'm not even kidding. I would just have these sheets and sheets. I lived in the world then of that data would be helpful. I've since evolved from that world. My journey has taught me that's not the way that works. But just have sheets and sheets of documentation of seizure onset.
I think that's what we do, though. Yeah, but that's what we do. We try to get data because it's a way we try to get control of things as we're doing those things. So data isn't all bad, but I get what you're saying.
I love data, for sure. But I thought at that time that I could get this data together, give it to somebody who knew what to do, and we would solve the problem. It actually took us quite some time to get his health under control. And so I had to resign as the controller, because that's not a position that holds on indefinitely. And I really couldn't put my coworkers and couldn't put Boise State in that position where there wasn't someone in that key role. So I resigned because I was really the only one who could care for my son, honestly. And lots of people could be the controller. So
yeah, but that's hard. I mean, that's a hard decision to make.
It was such an identity crisis.
Yeah.
I really realized how much identified just everything about myself through my job and through my title. This is my title and this is what I'm doing. So this is even my credibility on things.
100%. I think that's more true in the US than other places in the world. But I know when I left my corporate job, same thing. It's like, okay, who am I now? Who am I without that title, without that paycheck, without that role that we so associate ourselves with?
And even though intellectually I knew that it was so much more significantly important to care for my son than it was my title, I knew that intellectually, but it caught me by surprise in so many places where, like, there was a time when my son's health settled and I was taking him to preschool. He went to preschool a couple hours a day, and I was dropping him off, and in the parking lot met a grandfather of another child who was being dropped off at preschool at the same time. And he asked me, "Oh, what do you do?" Mm-hmm. And I found myself explaining what I used to do. I used to be the controller at Boise State, but now I'm not doing anything because I'm caring for my son. But it caught me in ways like that, where then later I was like, why did I even say that? That's so interesting. Like, somehow I had to give credit to my abilities through describing what job I used to have.
Because just taking care of your family isn't good enough, right? I mean, it's one of the things that we deal with as women in this world, because there are a number of women that choose to stay home, or men. I mean, I have friends whose husbands stay home with their children.
Yeah.
But there's some almost a stigma associated with that. Even for people that just take a break, right? So I totally get that.
I think that's true for sure. I was also young, and just I didn't know things when I was young that I know now. I think some of it also was I grew up in Utah. There's a certain faith in Utah and a certain this is a world according to Jen. So others may view this differently, but women pursuing a career was not celebrated there. And there's a definition of the role and the place of women in that culture. And I always felt like I was kind of fighting against that because my natural self didn't really fit that expectation or that mold. And so when I was younger, I maybe do it now too, who knows, but when I was younger, I was always kind of fighting against that. And some of the ways I was doing that was through my career.
Absolutely.
You know what? Yeah. I'm a capable person. I can do all kinds of things. Here's an example. I have this role. So anyway, once my son's health was more stable and he was able to go back to school and do some of that for a period of time, I went back to Boise State, but in a different role. And the role was doing process improvement, continuous improvement kinds of activities. And there's definitely an organizational change management element to that. And especially in higher education, it tends to be a culture that doesn't like a lot of change, really loves routine and things staying pretty static, even though there are a lot of pain points with it. It's not like a young startup tech company that is looking forward changing every single thing. So that was the first real awareness of people and change and organizational change management in the workplace.
So wait a minute. I just need to ask this question. So you're an accountant, right? You're working on numbers, and your education probably didn't include a whole lot of people skills, right? That kind of thing. So now you're put in a role where you're having to work with process improvement, which on paper is very linear because I've done a lot of process improvement myself. But then you get, to your point, all the factors involved and all the people that want to say, but we've always done it this way, right? That was my favorite thing when I was doing process improvement. People would say, but we've always done it this way. Well, that doesn't mean it's the right way to do it or the best way to do it.
Right.
But, that had to be just a huge change for you dealing with that kind of mindset and those kinds of issues.
It was a period of significant change, both with my son's health, my identity as a person, switching to doing things that weren't part of my original plan. I was learning at that time in my life to, have a plan but adapt. And that A plus B doesn't necessarily equal C in the world, that you just have to be open to opportunities and new ways of doing things. I was learning all of that at that time. And I really did like process. I love the momentum that comes from solving and having a good process in place, just how easy it can make things. It was a component of what I was doing when I was the controller, but it was more the denominator of the work I was doing than the numerator. So eventually that turned into a new department called the Office of Continuous Improvement, which was a group that was implementing and supporting the cloud operations on campus, and in partnership with the IT group, and we led change management and all of the process improvement and some of the adapting that the tool did. We handled all of that. So that was my last role, Office of Continuous Improvement. At that time, my older son went to school at Boise State University. Significant tuition benefit there as well. And I was just kind of done. I had been there for 20 years. It was time to make a shift. Even though I had done a lot of things while I was there, I really was interested in moving to a different industry, doing something different. I wanted to get my son through school because it was such a huge benefit to him and helped him set up his life. So when he graduated, I popped my head up and started looking at, okay, what am I interested in? And I had certain criteria. Didn't want to travel a ton. And when I was young, that was exciting. When at my current age, the idea of traveling and being gone all the time sounds exhausting, not exciting. I certainly can travel, but I wasn't interested in something like consulting where I would be gone all the time. I wanted a really short commute. And I wanted to work with a company that I feel like had real value and that I could really contribute. So Simplot is a company that's actually really close to where I live. It's the headquarters. Even though it's a global company, the headquarters are in Boise, Idaho. So pretty fantastic. And it was really focused on a deeper element of organizational change management. So it happened really fast. Made the shift a couple years ago now. We're moving into almost 3 years, I guess, at this point, into that. And in this role, we're in the middle of a pivot. Again, we're moving from supporting strictly IT projects, IT initiatives, global IT initiatives, into more anything strategic, because there are some changes that happen for the business that aren't necessarily triggered by a technology event, but have a really big impact. So we're in the phase right now of figuring out what that looks like, what the intake is, how we support that. So that's sort of my career journey.
That's kind of exciting. Yeah, that's kind of exciting. And I love that, like what you said about have a plan but adapt. And I think that's one of the things that women leaders are particularly good at is adapting. You clearly, your life story tells how much you've had to adapt to, an environment in Utah where working wasn't necessarily supportive, to moving out of state, to dealing with your son's issues, going through your whole identity crisis. I mean, adapting is so important, but the key to adapting is adapting but not giving up yourself, which it sounded like when we made your career transition from Boise State, you were pretty solid and clear about what you wanted in your next career, and you got it, which is really awesome. So going through another transition now, what's next? You mentioned that you wanted to make an impact and make a big contribution in the organization when you made your move at Simplot. So are you still making an impact there, or where else do you want to make an impact?
Yeah, definitely. We've recently, within the last couple of months, moved into leadership and organizational development into the HR organization. It's such a good fit. There's a lot of synergies between organizational change management and HR and leadership and organizational development. It's new in that space. And so there's a lot of work to be done to figure out how do we merge into that space and what are the right things for us to be working on in this global space that really provide value for the business, really move the HR organization forward. So there's a lot to be done there, which is really exciting. I have just a superstar, rock star team that is really, really will help that along quite a bit. They're very, very engaged, great ideas. Each person is really different from others on the team. It's quite a collection of different people that make a real rock star team.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's
joined another rock star team. So there's a lot to be done there for sure. So that's definitely where I am now. But I'm at an age also where I'm thinking about the next step, because I probably won't work forever. I mean, that's not my husband's already retired. So I am, I'm working, and at some point we'll probably both want to be retired. So I am also the thing that speaks really loudly to me right now at this phase in my career is I've always had such amazing mentors in my career.
Mhm.
People who would just sit me down, tell me the things I needed to hear, give me really good guidance, really supportive, cheerleadery, which was great. And now I feel like that's kind of the space I'm in now, where growing my team, being a good mentor, helping grow capability, or being a sounding board for folks who are at a different phase in their career, navigating that, um, or at the phase that I'm in and just needing support. Um, so there's a lot of that in my space right now, which is lovely, and I feel like there's a lot of value to that.
Yeah, and I think that often happens to women when they get to a certain point. The post empty nest and looking at the next phase of our lives. I think there's something that, at least my experience, both with myself and many other women that I know, you get to this point in your life where you're like, okay, what is next? I'm making a contribution now, but how do I make a bigger one? How do I make a bigger impact? What kind of legacy do I want to leave?
Right.
And so when I'm going to throw out some words as you're thinking about this next phase in your life, and see how they resonate with you and what they might impact. So first word is freedom. What does that mean to you, and how would that impact your future?
Oh, freedom. So, it's still my number one barometer, financial security, still the number one. So freedom to me is financial security.
Okay.
So to be able to do what I want with my time, with my money.
Absolutely. The second word is truth. You mentioned truth as before when you were talking about numbers. How does truth play out in what you're doing now and what you're doing in the future?
Oh my gosh. Truth, I guess, has a relationship to truth can be so subjective, right? Everyone might look at the same thing, and the truth for that is different in every head. So maybe it's a truth to me is honesty for my own perspective. What is my truth? What resonates with me? What makes sense for me? And being true to myself.
And as you look at your role now and your evolving role as a mentor and a leader, as in leadership, how does being true to yourself help your work, and how does it create issues?
So starting with how it creates issues, and something that I'm learning right now, I'm living such a learning lifetime, but the big thing I'm learning right now, my natural self is very much a driver and always going to the next thing. As soon as the path is figured out on one thing, my mind's switching to something else. And I have a momentum and a push inside me that can be very off-putting to folks, especially I have to be really careful with that at Simplot because it can be off-putting and it can feel intense to people. I do also just if there are things happening in my personal life with my son, like my son's having a struggle that I've learned recently that can come into my intensity in a way I wasn't really aware of. So that's where my truth can create problems for me. If I want to meet my objectives, I have to look at how I approach things, how my truth has helped me. I have the capacity to do a lot more than I'm doing. So not that it's definitely give my all and 100% when I'm at work. I also have the capacity. I'm co-authoring a book right now with a business partner. It's on organizational change management, but tying the connection between leaders and leaders understanding their relationship with change and how they can also guide their teams through change, and how that really can be a catalyst to get to a completely different place, and just the importance and the human side of change. So that's what I mean by that. That's where my truth, knowing that me accomplishing things and working on things that have a lot of value to me, that's a great way for me to relax over the weekend. When I was younger, honestly, I was very influenced by what I should be doing. Like, oh, it's the weekend, I should be I don't know, I should be not doing anything. I should just be relaxing. And sometimes that's true. But my truth is the way that I rejuvenate is by working on things like this, like writing this book with Stacy. So,
which is really cool. And I think I know I've talked to you and Stacy a little bit about the book prior to this conversation, and I'm going to be excited when the book is ready to talk to you both about that. Maybe even have you back on the podcast for that again.
definitely.
But I love the fact that you're addressing the leadership role in change, because it's so important, and the leader's attitude and aptitude and adaptability is so huge in changing. And if you have leaders that are struggling with the change and the uncertainty themselves, it just trickles down. I mean, it makes the rest of the organization uncertain with it as well. I know I address that a lot in my work, and I address it a lot in my work now with women leaders, because getting that adaptability, and I love this conversation because I love how you've addressed the issues of being adaptable, but staying true to yourself and knowing how to bring yourself forward in ways that maybe, to your point, not everybody wants to be brought forward in the same way. And it's amazing how you've learned and acquired those skills starting out with an accounting background, because you would never think of accountants as people that are sensitive to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, have a plan and then adapt. I mean, seriously, that's also the same advice that I give to my children. My older son is more the type, he's very similar to me in that he wants to have a plan that results in a certain outcome. But he's young enough that he hasn't learned to get that doesn't always work that way. So life happens and you definitely need to adapt. I think that also on the leadership side with change and awareness, sometimes leaders are in a position of power. They just are. They're decision makers, they're influential, and an awareness of how others who are not in a position of power and who are experiencing change in a really high stakes situation. Work is a high stakes place, huge, because it's how you identity. We talked about that already. It's how you earn your living. It's how you're setting yourself up for retirement. It's how you have health insurance for your children. I mean, it's huge.
It's everything. Yeah, absolutely.
It's everything. And when you're not in a position of power and it feels like it's an unstable workplace because things are coming out of left field, and if change is not managed quite right, then you can also lose people. Or, I mean, it turns into retention issues. It turns into productivity issues when it's an unstable environment, because there's an awareness that something's happening, but we don't know what's happening. And everyone's kind of chatting with each other about what might be, or even just concerned about, oh, am I going to lose my job? Should I be looking for another job? The productivity levels they just plummet. And so having an awareness for how, as a leader, awareness of how impending change or a change can impact people, and handling it in a way that creates trust and supports individuals through that change, that has ripple effects into the future well beyond the specific change initiative.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's a big component of that as well.
Okay, so I'm gonna just go, before we wrap up things, I'm gonna ask sort of one more big vision. You're talking about, you're writing the book, you're working at your job, you're thinking about retirement, future, whatever, legacy. What's one thing in your life that you want to do that you haven't done yet?
Let's see, what's on my vision board? It has such a list of things. Definitely want to write this book. I really like the idea of public speaking. I've done that, but associated with my job, typically. I'd love to explore public speaking, maybe in relation to this book or just through a consulting scenario that's more in maybe the retirement years look like a combination of hanging out with Joel, my husband, having coffee, and then also traveling around and speaking together. definitely that in terms of career. There are also some things that scare me. This will seem very unrelated, but some things I have on my vision board are facing some fears and accomplishing things that I have intentionally shied away from, which is as simple as certain things like running a 5K. The idea of that is terrifying and awful to me. Some things like that.
And are you going to try to do those?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah, I love that. Get out of your
take myself through it.
Get out of your comfort zone and expand that. Well, I am so happy that you joined me today, and I really appreciate you taking the time to have the conversation. I can't wait to hear more about your book and to see where you're going to go next. And, as things evolve, as we continue to grow and take on new roles in organizations or in society or in our families, it's so exciting to see the impact that we can have even in the later years of our lives. And I can tell you are somebody that is going to be doing that. So I am very much looking forward to hearing the next step in your journey as you keep moving forward. So thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It was a pleasure to speak with you. I love what you're doing with your company and highlighting this really amazing value added stuff. So thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome, Jennifer. And looking forward to our next conversation.
I am as well.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Daring to Transcend podcast. Please be sure to follow the YouTube channel so that you don't miss any of our upcoming episodes with many more interesting executive women. Have a great day.